Welcome to the Empowered Living Zone, where you can create the life you crave. With me, Dr. A, as a psychologist for over 30 years, a transformational life coach, and an expert in self-empowerment, my life's work has been inspired by the beautifully powerful resilience of the human spirit. We will share stories and successes of people who have not only overcome personal adversity, but have used their traumas and hardships courageously as a springboard into greatness. Create positive transformational shifts on your way to achieving phenomenal success. Get ready to level up as you move beyond the challenging terrain of your life's journey into the empowered living zone. Ignited by spirit, fueled by purpose, and guided by vision, the Empowered Living Zone show starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. A, and you are listening to the Empowered Living Zone on Transformation Talk Radio. You know, a vital part of my inspiring and empowering message includes real life stories of individuals who have not only used their hardships as fuel for their own success, but have used these experiences to do great things in our world. And today's episode is going to feature my first real life guest, Dr. Pat Baselli, and her adversity as a springboard to greatness story. I'd like to introduce Dr. Pat, and I'm going to do my best. This woman has done amazing things in the world, so I could probably spend the entire hour telling the listeners or sharing with the listeners all of the wonderful things that Dr. Pat is doing. So I will try to do my best to be succinct and concise as possible, because I'm excited to hear Dr. Pat's story. So Dr. Pat is the founder of the Transformation Network, which has been a home to experts paving the way for transformative conversations since 2003. Through the Transformation Network, Dr. Pat's mission has been to inspire, educate, and transform the world through powerful programming, providing solutions and options for living a positive and transformative lifestyle. And the Transformation Network is home to Transformation Talk Radio. Dr. Pat's drive to impact the lives of a broader audience, as well as offering individuals the chance to contribute to positive change, led her to begin the Transformation Radio Network. Now, with its initial launch in 2010, the network featured 30 hosts and has been providing a platform for a growing number of hosts and co-hosts to broadcast their message. By 2015, the network increased syndication and it added additional channels to diversify content and meet the needs of every listener. Topics range from personal development to critical issues relevant to a rapidly changing world. As Dr. Pat says, we talk about everything from sex to spirituality with a vibration that honors the dignity of the human spirit. Transformation Talk Radio is broadcast globally and is distributed through over 100 digital outlets and mobile apps, reaching audiences from all over the world, and continues to grow and expand. Now, the Transformation Radio Network goes beyond radio because it allows its hosts to increase their visibility and media presence while being supported by an award-winning production team, sending out messages of positivity and transformation, as well as connecting people through radio broadcasting, is just one of the few things that Transformation Radio Network specializes in. It has some of the world's most preeminent visionaries, change makers, best-selling authors, motivational speakers, leading-edge scientists, futurists, world-renowned spiritual leaders, environmentalists, educators, inventors, filmmakers, artists, mystics, and healers that are stimulating and supporting individual and collective growth, positive cultural shifts, and making a meaningful difference in the world. But That's not all that Dr. Pat has done. Dr. Pat is also an internationally acclaimed radio host of her show, The Dr. Pat Show. The Dr. Pat Show was created and has continued to catapult into what is now a syndicated #1 hit radio show heard around the world. Also, Dr. Pat is a TV commentator, a certified career and belief coach, a dynamic seminar leader, an inspirational speaker, award-winning author and researcher, and a CEO and owner of a successful inspirational company, Unlimited Possibilities Now. She is also the creator of Unstuckable Coaching and Consulting and of Crust Building, where she supports individuals and organizations to break through their limiting crust, the crust that keeps them stuck, so they can face challenges with courage, reach their full potential, and transform their lives and achieve their goals. Dr. Pat has extensive experience in the human resource development and training, senior management coaching, organizational and cultural change in both the public and private sectors of business. Pat's educational credentials include a PhD in IO psychology from Claremont Graduate University, MA in organizational psychology from Columbia University, an MA in psychology from Claremont Graduate University, and a BS in business management from the College of St. Elizabeth. So Dr. Pat, wow, you have done some amazing things in this world, and I am honored and very grateful to have you here today. And as you know, I know that we had talked about my journey, and I'm really excited to hear about the person behind all of these wonderful creations. You know, it's fascinating to hear what leads people to their passions, you know, and I would love to hear your story. What is your adversity to springboard to the springboard of greatness?
Wow. First of all, let me thank you for that introduction. I've been introduced many, many times in my career, and that is the most thorough introduction that I've ever gotten. And, you know, beautifully done. And it's a reminder of the journey. So if you looked on paper, especially if you go back to high school, if you looked on paper or you talked to some of my classmates, which I just did when I went back last year to Plainfield, their class reunion. It's the first one I've ever gone to. And if you listen to them about, you know, we didn't know we were going to find you. We thought you were dead, right? And you hear the, and we laugh about it now a little bit, right? You understand a little bit about what the journey was like. But I will say this, from a very, very young age, I had a little bit of a spark. Now, sometimes too much of a spark, too much. I was curious always, but I was also different. I had some disabilities, and I use that term only for effect now, but I want to be very clear with people. We've changed the language of things. Once upon a time, you were considered slow, disabled. Now we just say you're learning different. That's the new term. But with all of that, I have to really think about what was inside of me, you know, and when I think about my own journey, and when I'm on an airplane and people ask me, you know, what do you do? And then how did you get there? You're on this airplane, right? You can't get away from whoever it is. So let's just be very clear. You better figure out what you're going to talk about and how you're going to transition from not talking with them, right? Unless it gets really super interesting. But if you're on an airplane and you somehow get into a conversation, as like thousands of you have gotten into, I know you have, because I've read some of the stories. You get asked certain questions. And I always get asked after they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I run a positive live streaming video podcast community network. And they scratch their head a little bit. And then they ask, after 3 or 4 other questions that you've answered, probably really short, because you don't want to spend your 5.5 hour trip talking about yourself on the plane, do you? No. I don't think you do, Dr. A, right? No. Yep. When I get on the plane, I like get my little videos going. Like I have like 5 or 6 movies that I want to watch. That's what I want to do. But you don't want to be rude. You're going to be on a plane. And then they ask, how did you get there? And I always say the following. I say, first of all, let me say this. I am here because I believe in a benevolent universe. You can call it God. You could call it God of your understanding. My table tennis partner is Hindu. It doesn't matter what you call it, but I really believe in that. And I believe in the pathway. And then they usually say, but you didn't answer my question. And I say, here's the deal. I am so blessed. But I want to tell you, my journey started being born into this world as a child, a very young infant of a mother who was on prescription drugs and alcohol. I cried for 4 years because I was really different. We have a term for it now. There's a neurological thing we call it now. But I cried. So they got me quiet by numbing my gums and rocking me incessantly all the time until they got me a rocking horse at a very young age, which they then could not get me off of. And then to subsidize the rocking horse, my uncles who were in the boxing industry got me boxing gloves and a boxing bag. And so between my rocking horse and a boxing bag, that's what I did most of my young life. But soon thereafter, my mom got very sick. I ended up in Catholic boarding school. I was abused at a very young age. I was beat every night. Why? Because this kid that had this incessant obsession to jump up and down, I would jump on the couch. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can see it. I probably have to move. I got a scar here because that was what I loved to do. I like to jump on the beds. I lived in the projects, jump on the beds, and I hit the radiator one day. But this was me. My mom commits suicide while I'm in school. I talk to Jesus. Jesus tells me that my mom is with her. So the story goes on. I think I'm the youngest person to ever get expelled from a Catholic boarding school, but I don't really know the difference. We go on with my life. My dad remarries my stepmom, his secretary. We now have 2 other kids, and I learned something from this woman. You see, I don't believe that we get on a pathway in life, even the toughest times, without there being a beautifully planned, amazing life journey that we are meant to get to. But sometimes we get some of the toughest teachers there are. Like I never forgot the guy that gave me an F because I decided to take an incomplete in his class because I thought he taught economics horribly. The lesson I learned is you can't change the system. You will get an F. If you get an F, you're really doomed to have that on your record. I begged, borrowed, and I overturned that. But you see, these are the lessons we learn. So for me, on this short airplane, I say, well, let me just tell you how it started. Born into this world as a child of an addict and an alcoholic, I was learning different. I had a neurological disorder, which we now you call it whatever you want, but now we just kind of talk about the spectrum. We talk about things like that because we don't know how to really look at people. By the time I'm 6, I'm in Catholic boarding school. I'm beat every night. By the time I'm almost 7, my mom commits suicide. My dad remarries his secretary. I now have 2 stepsisters and a woman that my dad married that's almost the same age as my sister, who is 12 years older than me. And I'm only 8 now. By the time I'm 17, I'm homeless. Why? Because I don't make sense of the world. And I decided I'm going to draw a mural on my mom's living room wall. Why? Because I was just compelled to. And I learned that when you're homeless, of course, I go to New York City. Why? I was born in New York City, raised in New York City. I knew New York City. I thought it would be fun. But here's what you learn. When you go to New York City and you have no money and you're 17 and you don't know what to do, you learn 2 things. If you're going to beg for money at the Port Authority, which I did, make sure that if you have a baseball cap on or a sports cap, that you make sure you cover all the teams in that city, because you don't want to sit there and put a Mets cap on when the Yankee fans are walking by. So I learned how to ask for money at a very young age. The story from there goes on to say, and by the grace of the God of my understanding, goddess, infinite possibilities, whatever you want to call it, I happened to get a job from a guy that caught me dumpster diving in his dumpster behind his store on an alley in Manhattan. And I was eating his hot dogs out of the dumpster because I love hot dogs. I don't care if they're in a dumpster, I'm hungry. And the guy said to me very quickly, if you tell me the secret ingredients in the hot dogs, I'll give you the job. Of course, I could do that. And I told him everything that was in there, but I didn't quite get to the secret ingredient. And here's how I learned about the power of intuition. All of these other things taught me about the power of intuition, but this one right here, this is the one. I get to the end, he said, you left an ingredient out. Now I'm pounding down the hot dogs because I'm hungry. I'm not paying attention. And I heard something say nutmeg. And I looked at the guy smoking away in the alley with this dirty whatever he had on. I didn't know he was the owner. And I said, it's nutmeg. And I said, are you going to give me the job you just promised me? And he did. So you see, why am I sharing all this? Because when you're on an airplane and you're having this conversation and you really don't let up, you just keep talking. You don't let up. You just keep talking. And now everybody's listening to the story. The person on the other side of you, the person in the back row, the person in the front row, because you're telling the story. And I get to the part where I'm selling hot dogs. And he said, and I said, yeah. So there you go. I gave you years 1 through 17. And he said, well, what happened when you were 18 and 19? Okay, I'll tell you the story at 19. So I'm not going to spend the whole show on this, but I did tell him the story at 19 on how I was arrested for something that was an accident. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't. I got pulled over by a cop. I got my hippie jacket on with the shingles, and the cop's going through my car, and I had a few drinks, just a few, just saying. Okay, I'm 19. I had a few drinks in a state that you're not supposed to be drinking at that age. And I went to move, grab his arm. And what do you think happened? My big Jimi Hendrix shingle got attached to his gun. And he's pushing me away, and the gun is coming with me. I learned about the truth. So the hot dog taught me about intuition in the real world. Getting in court told me about telling the truth and the truth of keeping your word. Because my attorney wanted me to tell a story that wasn't true. And he started to tell the judge this cockamamie story. And of course, I stood up and said, you know what, Judge? Hammers banging. I said, no, I need to tell you the truth. And I told the truth. Here's what I learned about the truth. See, I know that I have somebody looking out for me, even in everything you've just said that I've accomplished. I have not done it alone. That's part of the message. When we have a belief that anything is possible and we're not put on this planet to really live in the hardest of times, although I know what that's like, and there are millions of people that do that. The thing that's free in this world is hope. That's what the network was founded upon. It wasn't because I'm smarter than anybody else. It's because we were in the worst economic downturn of our history in 2009. And I had the same thing inside of me that I said to the judge when I'm 19. So what was that? I tell him the whole story, and the judge looks at me. I'll never forget this, Plainfield, New Jersey, in the courtroom. I didn't understand the grave nature of this charge. This is a serious thing, Dr. A. I mean, really? Pulling a gun out of a holster of a policeman? I didn't understand it. And the judge looks at me, first of all, scolds the attorney, tells him to sit down, and then finally tells him to leave the courtroom. And he said, look, I have been in this courtroom 30 years, and I have heard murder cases. And he went through his big story, because that's what they do. They got to tell you their whole life's journey. And he said, but I'll tell you something. You are either the stupidest person that has ever walked the planet of the earth. Completely stupid. I mean, this is the way he was talking to me. And my uncle's in the back, who was a cop. And he says, or you just told the truth. You know how you have a moment where there's a decision that's made about your life? Do you know that moment, right?
Yeah.
Where you're holding on innately to everything that got you to where you are in that moment, all the abuse, everything that you could possibly imagine that got you to that moment. And you hold on to the knowing that the right thing will be done and the right pathway will be laid out for you. That's that moment. And he said, you know what? I don't think you're stupid. So you must be telling the truth. So I also learned, because I wanted to demonstrate with the cop in the room how that happened. And the judge said, no. But you see, what are the lessons from what I'm sharing with you? Everyone approaches this world, and we come into this world extremely courageous. I was just doing a show and talking about this. When we're born, we don't think, I don't think I should cry. I'm really hungry, but I don't think I'm going to cry because I don't want to offend my mom or whoever. I think I'm just not going to. No, we cry courageously for something we want. Scream. Ever heard a baby scream when they're hungry? Scream. And I learned that throughout my life, that there is something that each of us has that is screaming. You see, it's been in us since birth. Even me, I was a little slow, right? Everybody told me, you're slow. Man, you can't read. You can't. I graduated high school, couldn't read or write. Hello. Um, something wrong with you. You're a little slow. But you know, you do these other things really well. See, there's something inside of all of us screaming. And this is what I want to say: adversity in life. Adversity in life is a given. Suffering is really optional. See, that's part of what I love about what I just shared with you. Now, 15 minutes on the airplane, just like we spent today, 15 minutes, and you think you're going to be done. But now I got the people in the back row behind me standing up out of their seat. What happened when you what happened when you turned 21? Do you know how long in life it took me to tell that story though? Do you know how hard it is sometimes for me to tell it now? Not to mention having a drug and addiction problem from age 2, carrying it forward into my life. You know, living a life that when I think about and I go back, and I have had to go back and make amends and apologies for so many people. But I'll tell you, something happens. I don't think the universe, whatever you want to call God, higher power, it doesn't matter what you call it, nature, the frog. This morning we were having a little moment with a rabbit. Whatever that is you believe in doesn't give up on you. We give up on us. And today I can tell that story and then get off the show and not feel ashamed about myself. See, because that's what I want to say to people. Adversity is a pinpoint to courage. And you don't have to prove anything to anybody but yourself. Dr. A, I know you've been in this situation. Let me just ask you before we go to break. I wasn't able to share this on the plane, but I'll say this. This morning, I had a moment with someone where we want to participate in an event. And, you know, I always prepare for these shows. So the moment I had this morning, something came out of my mouth that I haven't said in a good 20 years, maybe longer. And we're getting planning for this event. And the conversation is, are they going to give us a booth? This is a big addiction event that's going to happen in the fall. And we're players in this field. We're launching a network. So we're talking about it. And I'm saying, well, why wouldn't they want us there? We can do interviews. We can really, and the conversation went to, well, you have to prove yourself to them. I'm going to hold what I have to say for when we come back from break. Because you see, when we live a life of adversity, something happens to us where we may think every day of our lives we have to prove ourselves to someone, to something. We're not good enough. We have to prove ourselves. This morning, I found myself in a negotiation and a light bulb went on. Thank goodness for that. Adversity is a word. It doesn't have to be a life's path, does it?
Oh, not only that, it's not a bad thing. You said something about, there was a time when you couldn't tell your story. You had shame about it. And we tend to make our adversity personal, like there's something wrong with us, or we're broken, or we're bad because we've had this adversity, and we don't want to tell anybody the story because we're afraid of being judged as broken or bad or not good enough. And adversity just has a purpose. It's the path, right? It's the path, Dr. Pat. This is your hardships, your challenges in your life paved the road to where you are today. And I can say the same thing about myself. It's the adversity that has made me who I am today. And because of that, just like you, I can tell my story without shame, because I know, as you said, adversity brought you hope. Adversity brought you inspiration. Adversity brought you truth. And those are all powerfully magical things. And I know that we need to take a quick break, and we come back. I want to hear what you have to say. You're holding us hostage with that. You're listening to the Empowered Living Zone with Dr. A and Dr. Pat, and we'll return. And as soon as we get back, we'll hear the story, the rest of the story. We are back on the Empowered Living Zone with me, Dr. A, and Dr. Pat. Before we get started to hear about hearing Dr. Pat's story, the remainder of her story, I'd like to let the readers or the listeners know, if would like to inquire about the opportunity to work with me, or you'd like to learn more about empowered living or psycho-spiritual transformational life coaching, you can reach me through my website at www.empoweredlivingcoaching.com. That's www.empoweredlivingcoaching.com. So, Dr. Pat, you left us with a cliffhanger.
Well,
so we'd like to hear the rest of the story.
Yeah, and I also want to get back to some of the other questions you have. And honestly, I didn't plan to share that story. It was just it was on my mind because of a conversation I had earlier today. And in the past, I have always thought, oh, okay, well, if they don't want to give us this, then maybe we can do more for them. Or maybe if, we can't negotiate, what is there to barter? Is that, we're always looking for ways to bring more to our audience. And this would have been a very important one. And after about 5 minutes or so, I don't know what happened to me, but the comment was made, and I'm not even sure they meant it this way, but it was enough to trigger an emotional reaction from me. And the comment was made, we have to prove ourselves. We have to prove. And I just had this moment where I stopped and I used a very truck driver cuss word next. And I said, I don't have to prove myself to anyone, and the network doesn't have to prove themselves to anyone. I went off. I said, I am done with it. I have had to prove myself over and over and over and over again. Every time my dad would call me, the first question was, how much money are you making? I had to prove to my dad, right? You have to go to college, get extended degrees. Who are you proving that to? Unless you have a passion. What are the many times we're trying to prove ourselves? See, this is the message, part of the message today, but this is also part of what you do, Dr. A. Empowered living zone are really looking at the things that shackle us. And the notion that we are continuously trying to prove ourselves to someone else, that is, for so many, that is the beginning of the demise for a dream. Because how can we launch a dream? How can we take our passion? How can we feel whatever that is? It doesn't matter. Maybe you want to be an artist. Maybe you want to teach people how to ride horses. Maybe you love cleaning houses. My grandma loved cleaning houses. She went and cleaned everybody's house. She loved it with the toothbrush and the whole deal. But you see, she did it because she loved it, not because she had to prove herself. But it hit me in a moment where I said, I don't have to prove myself. And this was after 5 calls today where I went through trying to prove something to somebody so that they would work with me to get something else. And I just said in this call, I don't have to prove it to you. You know what? The God of my understanding, what I believe in my spiritual practices. And I confuse people because I'll show up on a show like this today with ancient Sanskrit and I'll talk about Jesus in the same breath and people get confused. Well, what is she? And I always say, well, I'm a work in progress. But you see, proving oneself. And what I love about Empowered Living, Empowered Living Zone, is that you're opening up a space for people. Now, look, the network was born from a time where I was doing the Dr. Pat show and I was doing it on multiple AM FM radio, and the listenership blew up because nobody was working. Right. Can anybody even remember that? Oh nine, right? Does anybody have a recollection of 08 and 09? How people in the middle class had homes, found themselves in tents in Sacramento. I mean, does anybody really remember that? And I heard the listenership was enormous, and they were mostly women. And I was helping my friend launch his network, and he wrote a bad check to my friend Chris at WBLQ. Back then, we didn't have the technology. We developed our technology out of this, but the rest of the world didn't give us an opportunity to do what we wanted. We didn't have 5K on our phones. Whatever it, 5G. What is it? 5G on the phone. Now I think it's 10G. Live streaming everywhere. Satellites floating around up there, putting stuff in your car that you can listen. We didn't have that. But when Greg wrote that bad check for $2,200 and Chris DiPaolo, who passed away about a year ago, it just broke my heart, called me and said, Basili, you need to send me a check for $2,200 because you're starting a network. My answer was yes, of course. What did I do though? See, you said something before. Adversity will drive one of two things. You'll either become Teflon or Velcro. You'll either become stuck or unstuckable. You'll either take action or not. Within 10 minutes, I had put a job post on Freelancer, and I wrote the most ridiculous job post for a freelancer that you could ever read. It had everything in it. I need somebody to build a network, but I want a computer system to drive it. It has to be database driven, front end, back end. Oh, and by the way, I don't know how to run a network. So what I need you to be able to do is set the network up and run it from wherever you are. WBLQ will take all of our shows, all of the live streaming, and they will play it out of WBLQ. And I was ridiculous. An hour later, Oliver, I love you if you're listening. Oliver from Germany calls up and says, I can do it all. And I said, how much do you want? I paid him. Within a month, he developed the guts to what you now see. You experience this with our network. You go in, you put your show in, all of a sudden, magically, that was Oliver. And he ran it in my basement. This network started. This is true. You hear these stories about garage in my basement apartment with no windows. And then Jessica showed up as an intern. And the rest is history. Because everything we've wanted to do came from a place of being of service to doing more for these people. And they call in Dr. A and the stories. I mean, they were so gut wrenching. Their only outlet was to listen to media like this. And that's really, for me, why I'm here today, why we're expanding the network, why the addiction channel is the hottest thing that I need to do. We have other channels, the women's channel, we're going to have business channel, we're even going to have a sports and political channel. But this addiction channel is so needed. I have the same passion for this that I did back then. Every day, somebody's either lacing something with fentanyl, doing something with it. It just can't go the way that addiction and recovery have gone. It has been a silent killer because those in recovery were not allowed to talk about it on air. And I broke that rule right away. But see, everybody's got something in their heart. Somewhere along the line, somebody told us not to expect anything in life. That is so, I want to say to all y'all listening to this, you need to expect away. It's just hanging on to a result, a specific result that gets you, but you need to expect. You see, people say, go tonight and write your gratitude list. I really encourage you to do this, but I really want to know what you expect. I want to know that when you're out there talking, you're saying to whoever you want to talk to, but your spiritual energy is, you know what I expect from you? I expect you to keep your promise. Because one of the things you said that I will not, no harm, that I'm going to get paid double. One of the things you said that if I walk the pathway, if I walk the Buddhist pathway, it doesn't matter what pathway you walk, if you're part of nature, if you believe in new thoughts print, there are always promises. So when do we come back and say, you know what? You could tell I study promises, consequences, broken promises for 10 years. There's a reason I did that. But when do we say, you know what I expect today? I expect my day to be beautiful. I expect to have a great show with Dr. A. I expect to hopefully reach some people that maybe have given up, that maybe something is going on in your life where you think you're overwhelmed. I want you to expect more. You know, let's have an expectation movement, because somewhere along the line, thank goodness that didn't happen to me at a young age. Somewhere along the line, we were told not to expect anything. Just go into your job and do a great job. Don't expect anything. You know, get into a marriage. Maybe your marriage is not working. Well, you know what? That's, you've been married for like 5 years. Man, you shouldn't expect for it to be better. Well, don't expect for LGBT rights, gay marriage. Don't expect that to be a thing. Just kind of be happy with where you are, that you're not getting locked up like you did in the 60s. No, no. Expect your rights. Expect your life. Expect abundance. Expect prosperity. Expect to do good work to help others. You know, expect you and yourself to understand your own personal journey so you can get over here and say to everybody, you know what? We got to expect things, right? Now, that was a different airplane ride. That airplane ride with that conversation was different. But if we expect things, what is the enemy of expectation? Fear? Yeah. But there's one other that's really worse, Dr. A. There's one that sneaks in the back door. See, fear is great. When fear shows up, you're like, oh my God, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose that table tennis match. Okay, that's fear. And you could say, oh, that's crap. But there's another one, and it's been seeping into our culture since the pandemic. It's called doubt. Now, doubt is the empowerment killer, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it's different. It kind of creeps in your dreams. I was on another airplane ride, and somebody asked me about getting my degree. Why did it take me so long? People ask you the stranger, why did it take you so long? I said, what do you mean? I said, why did it take you so long? I said, no, that didn't take me so long. It took me 13 years to get my undergraduate degree because I was going to school at night. But I always get asked these questions, right? But there's something interesting about doubt and imposter. After I got my degree, graduated with honors, because I studied something. What here, all y'all out there going back to higher education, when they ask you what your thesis is you want to study, please pick something that you want to really study, right? You get two choices in this arena. One, you could pick something you really want to study and you really will study it. Or two, you really want to just get done and you'll pick something to help you get done, right? Everything else will get you confused. But if you pick something you love, you're going to study it and you're going to learn some things from it. But even after that, even after winning awards, I was lost in 2003. That's how I got my first show. But a reoccurring dream, and I had it a week ago, the same dream. For 3 years, I had the same reoccurring dream after I graduated. And it's me walking up on the stage at Claremont University, getting ready to get my degree, and the dean jumping up and saying, no, she can't have her degree. I just found out she's 3 credits short. You understand how insidious doubt is? I had to go to therapy for that. But it's true. We all have things that will show up. The question is, what are we going to do about it? what are we going to do when you create a network and you realize that your vision is so far ahead of your time, you have to wait for the cloud to be invented to do it well? Do you stop, or do you plan for the future when the cloud will be here? How about AI? 2019, we wanted to build AI for the soul, but nobody was building AI. Now everybody wants to help us build AI for the soul. How do you hold on to a dream in a world and a life when you have to wait? See, this is for me what I love to do to help people. That's why I work with all of you. One of my buddies who owns a network the other day said to me, I cannot believe you are meeting with your hosts. And I said, well, why is that? What do you mean you can't believe? He said, why are you doing that? You're the network owner. I said, okay, I don't understand your question. He said, well, why are you doing this? You got team and people. I didn't understand his question. That's how foreign it was to me, right? You know this, you and I have met, but the question was so foreign. I still don't understand why the question was so foreign to me. And he just kept badgering me about it. And I said, I'm going to make up a name because if I say his real name, everybody will know who he is. And I said, Joe, I don't even understand your question. How do you go to bed at night not meeting with your clients? You see, inside each of us, we have a calling. This is my calling. I'm not magical. I'm not different. I'm not special. I was given a pathway at a very young age to help other people. That's why I got the life I got. I wouldn't be able to talk to you. I wouldn't be able to have a network like this if I didn't learn something about it. I had somebody call me the other day and wanted me to coach their kid who was homeless. I said, why, on what? Coach the, wanted me, they heard this story and they said, I'll pay you to coach my kid so that my kid could be profitable on the streets of New York. And I just thought, I said, I'm not qualified for that. They said, Pat, we heard your story. We heard how you took care of yourself in New York. And I said, that was a different day and time. I said, the focus really is finding out what is it about your child that would get your child to make their own decision about the life they want. That'll coach. Adversity is a springboard. What do you need to know about it? When you jump on the springboard and you're getting ready to take that dive, please make sure there's water in the pool. That's my big power phrase for this show today. If you're gonna jump, check your parachute. If you're gonna die, springboard, is there water in the pool, right?
Dr. Pat, it's cool to listen to your story, and of course, you and I have overlap in lots of our experience. And one of the things that I'm struck by as you tell your story, you were talking about needing to prove, or these people asking to prove. And what I'm struck by your story is when you think about just the inception of Transformation Network and talk radio. This came from inside. It's like the force comes from inside, and you may not have been aware of this in the moment, but the positive expectation is there. You are acting as if it's already true. You're saying, who do I need to do this? There's no doubt. There's no lack of hope, and you're not allowing anybody outside of you to talk you out of it. It's like, this is it. This is going to happen. Who do I need? What do I need to get in place? How do I need to make it happen? And it's such a powerful force that it just catapults you through all of the doubt, through the naysayers, through the people that you think you have to prove something to. Proving yourself to somebody or something, it takes you away from the power of your calling altogether.
It does. And what's interesting is you have to hold on the vision for what you want. I didn't know how to get the resources, but I prayed for them. I prayed for a Jessica, an Emily, a Moxie, a Sierra. It took me over 10 years to get this team because I kept praying for it, but not believing it. You understand the power of that. When you pray for something, and I use the word pray, you can call it intention, affirmation. It's just a word that's up for me today because I'm actually praying for a friend that's going through a really troubling time. So that word's on my, but here's what happens. When you pray and you don't really believe in your prayer, you're not going to get it. So it took me a long time. And what was it that attracted Jessica, an intern from the Institute, to work in my basement and then have a job with me in my basement still, right? Not everything is going to turn out perfectly. You're going to have to take risks. You may be starting a business. You need to talk to this one. Starting a business, invest money in yourself and your business. Yes, I said that. Do you have the money? No. Get a loan if you can get a loan. If you believe in yourself, this is not hard. I can't tell you how. I started a foundation last year. I started a foundation because I've watched so many women try to do what you're doing and what I'm doing and just can't. So I decided, no, I can't watch it anymore. My heart just breaks, So I started a foundation, Voices in Empowering. It's VIEW, because it's Voices in Empowering Women, because we don't have voices. I know how to give them a voice and a platform. So why not start something to help educate people, train people, women that want to speak, that want to be out in the world. See, I'm not going to train them about how to become empowered. That's what you do. I want to give them tools and resources so they can work with you. This is what we're here to do. To this day, I don't know how I attracted Merrick, our current programmer. Oliver had to move on, but I want to share this last story. There are things that I asked for a sign for. Should I keep going? Should I keep going? I know you must do this too, right? Do you do this? Okay, come on. Do we gonna true confessions right here?
Yes.
Okay, don't we ask for a sign? This morning I asked for a sign when I pulled my little animal cards, right? You got to give me a sign. Do I keep going? I had 3 people in the past month offer to buy my company. Hello. I said, no. They said, don't you want to know how much? I said, no, I'm not selling the company. So I pulled 2 cards. Okay, you see those right there? The wolf, right? And the crow. But I asked for a sign. And Oliver gave me a sign about 6 years ago. Oliver, beautiful systems engineer programmer. He built the infrastructure. He says, you know what I'm doing? I said, no. German accent. I'm going to be a therapist. I said, like, for real? Like, yes, in Germany. I've got to pass the license in Germany to be a therapist. Wow. How did you get there? He says, you. And I said, Oliver, I don't think I've ever encouraged you. He said, you don't have to. He says, I know who you are. I know your credentials. I know what you did with them. I know how you help people. I'm going to go to school for a long time because Germany, to get certified in Germany, holy cow. He said, but I work with this network and I now understand the possibilities that I can create the life I want. And I want to become a therapist. See, if we can help people with that by creating a forum like this, that's what helps me sleep at night. What helps you sleep at night, Dr. A?
Exactly the same thing. That's the calling. That's my calling, is to help people get connected to that power, the power that you're talking about, the power that I've talked about. This is what pulls us through the world on our path and pulls us through our calling. Yeah.
Now,
I'm curious, Dr. Pat.
sure.
You think about your life experiences, and I know I said this when we were talking about my story. If somebody were to say, this is where you'd be at 50 or 60, I would not have called it, and I'm guessing you would not have called it either.
I told you, they thought I'd be dead, like in the
Right?
street somewhere.
Yeah. When you think about, like, what's your message? Like, if you were to sum this up in 1 or 2 sentences, What's your message?
It's very
what are you
easy.
standing for?
It's very easy. Matt James used to say to me all the time, whatever you think you are, you're more than that. So I want to start out with that. I don't care what you think you are, whatever that is. If you think you are the best in the world, you're actually more than that. That's my number one message. That's our theme for 2024. But there's something else that's so important. Each and every one of us from birth has been given something inside of us. My message is to find whatever coach, tool, book, breath of air that you need to get that spark back, and then do something about it. And I'm not judging what that is. You know, for me, selling hot dogs at 17, I was good at it. I did ruin a $2,000 pair of Italian shoes, but that's another story. But I was good at it and I loved it and I was so grateful. The message is today we've just come out of a pandemic, and I'm sorry if the government or other people don't want us to remember what you all have been through. You've been through it. Don't let that define you, though. Don't let your adversity define you. Let your adversity sculpt you. Let it remove all the doubt, the fear. Chisel that away. And when you do, what you're going to find is what Matt used to say all the time: whatever you think you are, you're more than that. And don't ever, ever, ever lose hope in action. Ever. And the last thing I want to say is people that'll tell you you can't, just please don't hang out with them anymore. Keep that interaction to a minimum.
I love the metaphor. I love the metaphor, Dr. Pat, about sculpting away the fear and the doubt, because what you think you are is even more than what you believe. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you.
And don't forget the service that you're providing. You know, don't forget when you created the Empowered Living Zone, that there was something that called you to do that. And that something is so much more than either one of us, because there's an energy and a life force that's pulling your message forward. There are people that absolutely need to hear it, that don't know how to ask for help. I hope they will contact you, and I hope they will get the help they need to do whatever the heck they want in life.
And also to trust that pull. Just trust it. Trust whatever calls you forward. Trust that. Trust that instead of the naysayers. Trust that instead of the people that say you have to prove yourself. There's nothing to prove. You're wasting your time by proving something. Show up and answer the calling. Thank you, Dr. Pat. Before we end today, if you're curious about empowered living and psychospiritual transformational life coaching, or you'd like to work with me personally, you're welcome to contact me through my website at www.empoweredlivingcoaching.com. Again, that's www.empoweredlivingcoaching.com. Stay tuned for the next podcast of the Empowered Living Zone. Join us every first and third Tuesday of the month at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Empowered Living Zone show with me, Dr. A, to create the life you crave. Tune in on the first and third Tuesdays at noon Pacific Time on TransformationTalkRadio.com and get ready for another show. Say yes to creating positive and empowering change in your life and move beyond life's challenging terrain into the zone of success. Be ignited by spirit, fueled by purpose, and guided by vision in the Empowered Living Zone. For more information on how to do deep transformational work with me and to create the life you crave, visit empoweredlivingcoaching.com. That's empoweredlivingcoaching.com. See you next time.